In the ancient forests of Dandakaranya in South India, there was an old woman unlike no one else. She lived in a small hut all alone in this dangerous aranya which was filled with demons and creatures as well as sages and seers. Just like any other force of nature, this forest had no discrimination either, in that it housed the greatest of seers, sages and mystics, along with the Rakshasas who were known to have the art of changing their forms as per their will. The old woman was a great saint herself, but she never cared about it, for her life was dedicated only to one purpose. She used her walking stick to go around the jungle every day and collect wild berries that grew aplenty in these forests. She tastes each of these berries by biting into them before either discarding or collecting them based on their sweetness. These wild berries could be really sour and nasty, but sometimes a few berries will come along which are really sweet, and the old lady used to collect only the sweet ones. Old and fragile only of the body, but not of the mind. Definitely not the mind, because she knew the person she was collecting the berries for would eventually show up at her doorstep, and until he arrives, she has to keep collecting the berries. She cannot just welcome him with nothing. Oh no, that would be a blasphemy. And so, this old woman spent the final years of her life in a small hut, all alone, collecting berries, waiting for this particular entity to come to her. For this entity was none other than God himself. It was early in the morning and the forest of Dandaka was in full vibrance. The old lady picked up her basket and got ready to devote herself to the daily chore of collecting berries. Then she suddenly felt her organs on the left side of her body start twitching, including her eyes. In the Indian culture, it was believed to be a sign of great impending joy. She was filled with excitement. Was this the day she would finally get to meet the Almighty himself? And rightly so, the pieces of the puzzle started to come together. She could sense miraculous things happening in the forest. Trees started growing instantly and bearing fruit. Animals and birds were making contented noises. She understood all the signs, exactly as prophesied by her guru before he left his body. The Lord was coming to meet her today. So she waited until the Lord himself came to visit her in her old house in the middle of this dangerous forest. And he eventually did. Even God had to stoop down to enter her humble abode. The old lady was beyond joy at this point. The person for whom she waited all her life was finally standing before her. His whole body had a blue aura emanating. His face was resplendent like the very sun itself. Just the sight of him was enough to get rid of all pain and sorrow, all the struggles she went through, all the sacrifices she had to make. Some might even say lifetimes of misgivings, just for this moment. For this moment was priceless and only for the select few. This is the story of Shabari, a tribal woman and a true devotee of Lord Rama who left her family and dedicated all her life to the service of her guru, the great Matanga Rishi. The Rishi prophesied that in her life, Shabari would get to meet Lord Rama. In fact, the Almighty himself would come and visit her in this forest. So Shabari spent the rest of her life waiting for Sri Ram. Shabari's devotion to Lord Ram was so pure and wholehearted that when Lord Ram and Lakshman were in the Dandakaranya, they visited Shabari's old hut when they could have visited many accomplished sages and mystics. In fact, it is said that they walked right past all the great sages just to meet an old tribal woman with a bent back but unbroken devotion. Looking at the effort she went through to collect all the wild berries, Lord Ram was pleased and even ate the berries, not minding the fact that they were half-eaten. Such was the devotion Shabari had for Sri Ram, and such was Lord Ram's kindness towards his devotee. Shabari also talks to the Prince of Ayodhya about taking Sugriva's help in bringing Sita home, and that paves the path for the rest of Ramayana. As for Shabari herself, after the darshan with Lord Ram, she no longer had any purpose to live, and so her bodily life came to an end. This story talks about the immensity of devotion Shabari had towards Lord Ram, and how she waited for him patiently throughout her time near Mount Rishyamukha. Even though many accomplished sages did all kinds of yajnas to appease Lord Ram, they were not successful to lure the Lord to their abode. Most importantly, this story talks about how the fire of devotion can burn through anything and everything, until even the Supreme has no choice but to yield